On this episode of Curtain Call, we switch from theater venues to theater troupes, sitting down with two members of the Villains Theater. Every story needs its hero. Chosen one, thrown into the unknown, expected to save the world. But every story needs its opposing force, the one who's destined to do everything in their power to stop the so-called protagonist. Well, tonight on Curtain Call, we're changing things up a bit as we go from theater venues to theater troupes, as we uncover the story of the group simply known as the Villains Theater. As I've jumped into the wild world of theater, I've had the chance to see many mainstay and traditional stories told on stage. Yet, when it comes to the Villains Theater, my expectations were always blown completely away as the troupe presented stories, both known and unknown, in the most unique way imaginable. And it all started with two people wanting to make their own mark on theatrical storytelling.
My name is Dan Bray, and I'm the artistic director of the Villains Theater.
I'm Colleen McIsaac, and I'm the artistic producer of the Villains Theater.
The job is mostly helping produce the shows we do, helping create the shows, often writing and directing, but also overseeing sort of the artistic creation of the shows, helping put the teams together.
We work to kind of decide what shows we're going to put on, how we're going to fund those shows. I do a lot of producing work, so that involves finding venues and writing contracts and figuring out the logistics of things. We also try to do a lot of things kind of within the community, so usually pretty heavily involved in that.
So the Villains Theater started in 2009, originally under the title Vile Passeist Theater. Bunch of words no one could say properly. The company started when I was doing my master's, and we were doing this futurism cabaret. It was just this really bizarre, kind of intentionally alienating performance that I had to be a part of. Part of the project was this manifesto that had been written in like the 1800s. The sort of pioneer of futurism slammed all the older, kind of more traditional theaters, this vile and passé theater. And I was doing this show and thinking, man, I would really love to be doing some vile and passéist theater right now. So after the futurism cabaret ended, I decided to go back to the theater that had originally drawn me into the business in the first place, which was Shakespeare, but also his contemporaries, the playwrights who were not being produced. Like, everyone was so familiar with Shakespeare, but no one was familiar with the work of his contemporaries. It wasn't being staged, but there were some really amazing plays. So for the first 10 years or so, the Villains Theater, then Vile Passeist, was producing pretty exclusively the work of Shakespeare's contemporaries.
I met Dan in an audition room for the Downstage Society for a production of Goodnight Desdemona, Good Morning Juliet, which I was auditioning for, despite not being a student, because I had just moved here during a recession and had nothing else going on. Dan ended up casting me in that play, and we found we worked really well together, so we've been working together ever since. And when he started his company, Vile Passeist Theater, he came back, it did a show in Toronto and then came back here and was interested in doing more shows. And I was like, well, let's make it happen. And so we started working together, and kind of the company grew from there.
Over time, we produced many plays by these other playwrights like Marlowe, Webster, Johnson, Middleton. But eventually, myself and my partner, Colleen, we started to question why these plays. We started to reimagine them. They became these kind of more abstracted or experimental adaptations of these works. And I think that was because both of us were also starting to get more and more into writing our own stuff. And then finally, about 10 years in, Colleen and I had a conversation where we're like, you know, we've kind of done everything we wanted to with these plays. We've sort of proven that we are interested in creating original work, and that's when we updated the mandate and the name to the Villains Theatre. Now the company is more interested in original work. A lot of our work is still inspired by pre-existing stuff, a lot of adaptation, and a lot of it still has the themes that originally inspired the company. So a lot of supernatural, a lot of kind of spooky, murdery things sometimes. I've been writing a lot of stuff that is like comedy, especially comedy that sort of integrates Shakespeare and other literary traditions and sort of just takes the piss out of it a little bit, just has a bit of fun with it.
It's been very nice because we've been able to kind of develop this, I think, collection of shows that are in some ways fairly disparate, but in other ways have a lot of common themes just because it's the things that we are interested in.
So the first play we did under the new mandate was Zomblet, Hamlet, but what if instead of a ghost, it was a zombie? And it sort of inspires this huge zombie takeover of Elsinore. And it was very silly, and I didn't know at the time where we would produce it because the Villains Theatre up to that point had not done any original work, but I read it with Colleen and some friends, and we just had such a good time with it, and we were all like, let's just do it. Like, why not? What's stopping us? So that was our first show. We did a COVID comedy called Shakespeare's Time Machine, which was about Shakespeare trying to end the plague. We've done, I don't know why they're all leaving my head suddenly. We do 1,000 plays a year.
Most recently, we did the second part of a trilogy that Dan's writing called The Night of the Bat, which is answering the age-old question of what if Shakespeare were Batman? That's been really fun. It's nice because people don't have to have in-depth knowledge of either Shakespeare or Batman, but the more you know kind of about each, the more levels of nerdiness you understand. We worked with Eastern Front Theatre in their Stages Festival to do Shakespeare's Time Machine. We did a play earlier this summer that was by Evan Brown and Gary Williams, a musical called Rain on the Parade, and that also kind of combined some really sort of like Shakespearean style text with people working in a theater with very contemporary issues and themes as well. And it's just been something that we've really been kind of enjoying doing. I'd say Dan's specialty, certainly in terms of writing, is he gets to shine with comedies and with kind of combining things that he's passionate about, which include nerdy pop culture things and Shakespeare. And I think that that's sort of what, in a lot of ways, makes these projects so fun to work on, both for us and from the feedback we've had, both the teams and the audiences, is that, you know, it's not something that we feel like, now we're forced to do this, or like this is the next thing, but it's something that we're actively passionate about and enjoy ourselves. And I think that that kind of comes through right through the whole process.
The Villains Theatre has created many different productions over their time as a group. While mostly the dynamic duo of Dan and Colleen, Villains also has a support group behind them, making everything possible and keeping the ambitions high.
The team is technically just me and my friend Colleen McIsaac, who's the artistic producer. We have a board of directors who are made up of different people around the city, mostly artists, but also some professors. We've had lawyers on the team. We're really lucky to have a board that is sort of there just to help us make sure we have what we need. Beyond that, we have a lot of artists that we routinely work with, but it changes with every show, and that's part of the thing we love about the company, is being able to curate the teams for the projects and give a lot of people different people opportunities, especially emerging artists. That's a big priority of ours. Recent grads, we really do try to make a concentrated effort to include them in our shows as well.
I think my favorite combo is being a performer and also having some kind of hand in the producing, because certainly performing is my first sort of interest in theater, and then I am really interested in just sort of helping create things and helping make the spaces and work with the teams to put together live theater events, kind of gotten more into playwriting as well. So it's really nice because I think for both Dan and I, we tend to wear a lot of different hats, which I think can lead to a really collaborative sort of room. The project we're working on right now, like Dan's stage managing for the first time, and it's a play that I've written. The play we just did, I was performing and he was writing, directing. We're always co-producing, so it's yeah, it can be a lot of different hats.
I've always just kind of been drawn to that sort of comedy. A lot of my artistic inspiration comes, I think, from British comedy, which is often really literary, and shows like The Simpsons, which is, just packed with jokes, but for the most part, they're all like really rich and there's different levels to it, and it's accessible, but also there's sort of like this underlying kind of like deeper humor that I really love about that show. It wasn't really an intentional choice, I think, to like, oh, I'm gonna do something that's funny, but also, commentary. I think that's just sort of what I always kind of assumed comedy was, and I think has continued to color the work that I've been writing and directing. So early on, when we started doing these early modern non-Shakespearean ones, we were also still learning a lot. Like Colleen and I didn't go to theater school. I did a master's in drama studies, but it wasn't very practical. It was more of kind of theory. We were really kind of just figuring out as we went along. And I think we created a lot of shows. I'm really proud of the work we did. We had a lot of fun, and I think we did some good stuff. But there was also some like really long stuff. And I personally don't really have a problem with that, but a lot of people, I think, became, Colleen's probably like, why are you saying this? But anyway, people, I think, let me start this again. So we had done 10 years of sort of these varyingly kind of faithful versions of early modern work. Some of them were moderately cut, but still, like a full-length show. Others were more sort of, like I said, these conceptual adaptations or reimaginings. We had sort of collectively reached sort of a natural stopping point with that type of theater. And so when we branched out and were suddenly doing new stuff and stuff that we both found really funny, but also energizing and exciting, because we had never done anything like this before. We just had never let ourselves kind of branch out like this. I think people were really surprised and really interested, and I think they showed up. They also heard zombies, I think that helped a lot, but I think there was curiosity, and I think, in my opinion, that the change to villains and the change in the mandate was really instantly celebrated and appreciated. And it's been, the last 5 or so years have been, wait, what year is it? It's been more than 5. I keep saying 5 years. In my brain it's 2015. It was, how long ago was it? So, for the past 9 years, my whole timeline is wrong. I'm so sorry. So, for 9 years as the villains, 5 years, really, wow. My brain completely messed that up. Have I ruined the whole interview?
But sort of at the same time, especially through the Fringe Festival, I would say Dan in particular was just writing these like hilarious comedies. And we were like, well, why aren't we doing these with villains? Like, why can't that be also what we're doing? And so there had been kind of a couple of, I would say, test runs that were outside of the company that we had seen be really successful. And then we realized, like, why not just bring that into the villains fold and make that what it is? Because that's what we are. And we're, a small independent company. So basically, it's the work that we want to make is the work that we make, which is a huge luxury and privilege. But the work that we want to make is often funny and often based on these things that we're, experiencing in our contemporary lives, like seeing a lot of superhero movies or, kind of contemplating how does this the classical training or interest that we have around Shakespeare world kind of meld with an audience member today and what they might actually be interested in or care about.
So, I think, well, okay, right, I remember. So it was 5 years as Vial Passaius, and then it was 5 years after that as the villains, but we were still doing sort of these adaptations that I was telling you about. Still early modern in theme, but a lot more creative license and adaptations. And then for the 5 years since then is when we've pivoted to these comedies and this original work. And yeah, since then, I felt like the last 5 years have been especially kind of energizing for the company and the audiences. I've always thought that, and I say this as a person who is always on his phone or on his computer, but I really think that we're getting to a point where we are so used to, I mean, just especially after COVID, like staying at home is so easy and it's so nice. And, you know, I think there is sort of this culture now of just communicating electronically and doing everything that way. But what I like about the theater is that it's this chance, like it's just like this excuse to put it all away and leave the house and go and know that you're going to an experience that you can have at home and that is going to be different, not just every night, but for every single person in the audience. You know, like for people, no offense, at a movie theater, like, you know, you can sit in different spots, but the movie will look the same. People will get different things from it, but, you know, it doesn't change really. But like a play, like everything is different. Like no matter where you're sitting, you're gonna have a different angle. Things are gonna go wrong. Things are gonna go amazingly well. Like there's gonna be surprises and discoveries, and the show is gonna grow. You can go multiple times in the run to the same show and have a completely different experience. So for those reasons, yeah, I think going to the theater is very important. But also, yeah, just this opportunity to like unplug and disconnect and just let yourself be present with other people and enjoy this experience that you couldn't have anywhere else.
Being a theater troupe means performing for those willing to take a chance on a story. To do that, you need a stage. And while the Villains Theater have graced many different venues, one has stuck out as a major player in the group's success.
The one that we use the most is definitely the Bus Stop Theater. That's where we first got our start. I think our first show there was in 2010, and we've been back there almost every year ever since. It's just an accessible, affordable venue run by really great people who just want to help make art. So that's always been sort of our home base.
The Bus Stop Theater, I think, is one of the reasons why Halifax has a good, thriving theater scene. 20 years ago, a combination of Howard By and Gary Williams. One was a kind of a carpenter and a it's like genius inventor. That's sort of how I see Howard. And Gary had a company called DePopo Theater. Their name stands for Daring Political Poetic. And had wanted to put on a show, and Howard had just kind of gotten access to this old pharmacy building on Gottingen Street, and they started making plays there. And with the help of people like Evan Brown, who was the technical director there for a number of years, and then kind of it passed along to Leanne Poole, managed it for a while, and Claire Waquet. Matt Downey's been working there for a long time. Just like this incredible team of people who wanted so much to make this theater survive. And we've heard so many stories in this city of like kind of smaller, underfunded performing arts venues shutting down, and the Bus Stop is just an absolute success story because it has been so loved by the community, and there was so much support that people were able to kind of come together. And when I first started being involved in it more formally, like Villains had done a show there in 2010. I think it was 2013 that I joined their board of directors that had kind of just been formed. And since then, they've managed to create it as a not-for-profit cooperative, to get funding from all levels of government to actually buy their building, so it's not in constant danger of being sold or torn down or them being rent-evicted, as is the case in so many other places during this really terrible housing and space crisis. It's just because it's accessible and it really is welcoming everyone in, I think that's made it a very like vital heartbeat of the performing arts scene in the city, and not just for theater either, but they do, of course, music and dance and comedy and drag and like basically you name it, and it's happened at the Bus Stop.
We've done the Open Spaces program a couple times, which is when Neptune and Theatre Nova Scotia select an outside performance to bring into their studio theater, the Scotiabank stage. So we've been lucky to perform there a few times. We also do a lot of site-specific work, so finding often a non-conventional theater, or rather space, and then performing there. We've performed in spaces at Dalhousie, we've performed at the Brewery Market. We just did a show at Point Pleasant for the Fringe Festival.
So the Fringe Festival, I think, is just an absolutely vital element of any kind of theater scene. So fringe festivals started in like, I think the 70s in Edinburgh, where there was like this festival going on and people had been not able to participate in it. And so they started a festival on the fringes of where the actual festival was happening. And the idea that it would be unjuried and that you couldn't have someone there as a gatekeeper saying like, oh, well, I don't think this is good enough to have in my festival. So that anyone could kind of do whatever they wanted. I'm originally from Edmonton, where there's the biggest fringe festival in North America. I kind of saw firsthand there the way that fringe theater allowed both for performers to kind of do whatever they wanted and to try new experimental things, as well as for audiences to kind of be able to test out theater at these very low stakes. Like often these shows are short, they're often inexpensive, they're kind of all over the place. And so the fact that the Halifax Fringe is thriving so well here, I think is really a testament to a good and healthy theater ecology, because it allows for companies like ourselves, like we've been going for a while, but we still do things at the Fringe because we know it will be sort of fun. It can be a little bit scrappy. We're at this point in our careers now where, you know, we do apply for many, many grants per year to try to get funding and try to do things in a very sort of formalized process. But we also just kind of from our love of it are really interested in doing shows that can kind of come together and just like bring some people together in a kind of shorter timeline, and that it can be a lot of fun. I think when people come to a villains show, they can expect something that at least will have a little bit of humor in it. Whether we're doing a play at the Fringe, like Night of the Bat, or like the play that we have upcoming in a couple of weeks, A Beginner's Guide to the Night Sky, which it could be a very serious play, but I think both of them have comedy in them in their own ways. So I think audiences can expect something fun, something honest. I would hope something transformative. That's always kind of my goal when we're making these things, is how can you have someone be not just passively watching something, but to actually be sort of a bit transformed by the experience, whether that's seeing a really funny comedy and kind of coming away from it a little bit changed, or just being different from having sat there with other people together in the same space, having this kind of collective experience.
I would say for both audiences and team members, actors, and designers, I would say that my hope is that they leave and they say, oh, I didn't know it could be that much fun. You know, I think Villains has really strived to have sort of this people's first policy, which extends through audience and the team, where we just want to make sure everyone is taken care of, everyone's looking after each other, and everyone is having fun. So creating these experiences, you know, for the audience, creating a show, often that feels like a cartoon or something that they've never seen before. And then for the actors, being in a room with people who care about them and want them to have a good time, where that is the priority versus the final product. But, you know, the process inevitably, it leads to that end result. You know, if the people are having fun in the room, they're gonna have fun on stage, and the audience is gonna have fun watching that. So that is my hope, that people leave and they feel like that they were better off than they were before, that they had fun and they wanna come back and they wanna keep seeing shows and working on shows. And yeah.
I think people can expect to have a really good time, and also, as Dan said, to be cared for by the teams. Like, we're really interested in making sure that people are taken care of in whatever ways that we can, as audience members, as team members, as community members. So, yeah.